This is a full guide on how to properly build the bingo in one's human, and without taking more time, let's get right into it. Alright, so as per usual tradition, let's take a look at how the weapon functions. Of course, if you already know all that, you can always skip the video to the parts that you'd like to see, but I highly recommend you to stick through it, because sometimes I will be dropping important info. So let's get started. So for the bingo, 70% chance to trigger the bullseye on a weak spot hit. The bullseye is its keyword feature. Then after switching to this weapon, the first hit will trigger the bullseye. Grants weak spot damage plus 15% on hit for 10 seconds, affecting stack up to 3 times. And after defeating an enemy with a weak spot hit, attacks plus 15% for 20 seconds. So I have to say that for the two latter buffs, they are not lost when you switch weapons. Right here, I'm at 2 stacks of the weak spot weapon hit. If I just shoot another one, I'm at 3 stacks. If I just holster the weapon, I still keep the 3 stacks. They are, although they are running out, so if I just pull it back out and I shoot, the duration refreshes. And that is the same for the attack plus 15% buff. Now for the bullseye, if you don't know what it is, it's a continuous debuff type that, and pretty much every time you trigger it on an enemy, the enemy gets highlighted, and highlight marked enemies will be outlined and just suffer vulnerability plus 8% for 12 seconds, so they just take 8% more damage. Now moving on to calibrations for this gun, you'd always want to run rapid shot style. It's what allows you to reach that high DPS number and to just constantly shoot. And then for the substats, go for double weak spot damage. They are pretty much your only option. And if you want to know how to use the rapid shot style function, essentially, if you want to shoot really quickly, right, the trick is you're aimed in, you shoot, and then right after shooting, you zoom out, and then you zoom right back in, and then you shoot again. So if I can just demonstrate it right here. Now for the accessories, for the muzzle, I'm running the large break for accuracy, and as usual, I always go for accuracy over stability, since most of the time I'm in OTS mode. Then for optic, I'm running the precision optic for the most amount of range. And for the magazine, it's going to be the tactical SR mag. Moving on to your secondary and melee options, well, your secondary weapon will be the wildfire. It can also trigger the bullseye on itself, and it can also allow you to get the weapon damage plus 25% for 10 seconds. Now for its calibration, you can run either precision style or rapid shot style with the X2 weak spots. It doesn't matter too much. And of course, you can always pair the bingo with the Doombringer, but if you want to learn more about that weapon combo, I'd recommend you to watch my Doombringer guide, since I would talk more about the Doombringer / bingo combo in it. Then for the melee weapon, run the long axe for its Fortress Warfare buff after performing a heavy attack, which gives 20% weapon damage. It also gains more usefulness the more people you're clearing content with, as long as they stand in the Fortress Warfare circle. The long axe Fortress Warfare buff is also animation cancelable if you still don't know, by swapping weapons or rolling right after beginning the heavy attack animation. So if I do this, I will get it in a second. Before I talk about the key gear and gear piece bonuses, I just wanted to quickly mention that if you enjoy my content, don't hesitate to support me by dropping a like and subscribing to my channel for more of my content. Anyway, for key gear, you'd want to run Old Huntsman boots / Season Hunter leather boots for your key gear. If you don't have Old Huntsman boots, you can always run the boots on the ground / earthly boots. The reason why Huntsman boots are better is because earthly boots effect is essentially in Huntsman boots, but Huntsman has the added effect that, as we can see here, after triggering the Bullseye, the next one bullet hitting a marked target will count as a weak spot hit, even if they do not hit the weak spot. So that gives you the potential to chain weak spot hits like this without ever hitting weak spots, as long as your first hit was a weak spot. And even if the enemy doesn't have weak spots, don't forget that before shooting at that enemy, you can always swap out and back into the Bringo to grant it 100% chance to trigger Bullseye no matter what. In any case, because the enemy is already affected by the Bullseye effect, the boots can allow your Bingo to proc the effect again even if the Bingo does not hit a weak spot. Moving on to gear set bonuses. For PvE, run 3-piece Renegade with 2-piece Bastille. Otherwise, should you not have these options, you can always go with 3-piece Agent with 2-piece Renegade or 2-piece Bastille, whatever. Just mix and match between Renegade, Bastille, or Agent. Then for PvP, you can run 3-piece Bastille and 2-piece Renegade as long as you crouch to shoot. Otherwise, you can run 3-piece Savior with Renegade, and there's just plenty of other options as long as you choose or mix and match between Bastille, Renegade, Agent, and Savior. It's really up to how you want to play your Bingo. Now for your Substats Priority, straight up don't get Resonance Suffix mods, they are useless for this gun. Then for weapon and gloves, the Bullseye suffix with just a weak spot damage bonus will be better. However, it might not be for PvP since the buff is applied after you hit an enemy that is already marked, and you might want to already have the weak spot damage bonus buff preemptively, right? So you should just go for the normal precision suffix. But if you do get a Bullseye suffix mod, look to have substats such as damage bonus versus X type of enemy and reload speed boost. Magazine capacity is fine, as a matter of fact for the precision mods as well, if you get 12% of it total from all of your mods combined, but the rolls are still better spent on offensive substats. Do note that you will never get substat lines such as weapon damage bonus, crit damage bonus, status damage bonus, nor weak spot damage bonus on a Bullseye suffix mod. Try to avoid Bullseye trigger chance if you have the choice between two mods with the same exact substat except for Bullseye trigger chance. It isn't that good of a suffix since the sniper is guaranteed to trigger Bullseye on its first hit, and it already has a high 70% chance to trigger Bullseye on subsequent hits. And considering that the extra trigger chance is multiplicative with the weapon's trigger chance, you'll get a maximum of 8.4% extra chance, which is not rewarding at all compared to getting the same amount of substat rolls into other offensive stats. Then, for all of the rest of the mods, get precision suffix. Then for the rest of the substats, aim to get weapon damage bonus, damage versus X type of enemy, and reload speed boost. For PvP, damage versus X type of enemy does not help you against real players, so you should just get a defensive substat. Moving on to mods, let's start with the gun ones. So for both your guns, run Vulnerability Amplifier for more damage, but you can always run Hunter's Perk for PvP since it reduces marked enemies' damage against metas by 20%, which are real players. Then for the axe, the mod used doesn't matter at all since the buff is never applied if you don't have the axe out when the buff is going to be up. For your helmet, Precise Strike is your best option straight up for its weak spot damage buff. Now if you don't have a Precise Strike, you can always use Momentum Up, but for this weapon, its buff is essentially just given after you've already shot 3 bullets, so it's never going to be the best. Then moving on to your mask mod, you'd want to run Most Wanted, and that is your only option. The other Bullseye mod gives crit, which you can see here. Targeted strike when hitting marked enemies, crit rate plus 10% and crit damage plus 25%. This is made for the Doombringer Shoddy, and the Bingo does not benefit much or even at all from this mod. Then for gloves, Munitions Amplifier will be best to counter all the diminishing return from having so much weak spot damage bonus. However, just like usual, weak spot damage boost can still be better for you than Munitions Amplifier due to its substat. Moving on to boots. Covered Advance is general best because it's either less conditional or / either gives more buffs. However, substats might redeem the other mods. Just know that if you end up running Ruthless Reaper Precision, then all of your reload speed boost buffs from mods or like gear are pretty much wasted, since now most of the time the gun will auto reload itself from 2 kills. Moving on to top, Munitions Amplifier is best, but substats could make you run a weak spot damage boost. Then for pants, 3 strikes is best, but do keep in mind that you can also run Unstoppable. But just know that Unstoppable is useless if you shoot at anything that is not further away than 20 meters. And do note that with 3 strikes, if you swap the weapon after reloading, you actually lose the buff effect. And also I have recently learned of a small bug where 3 strikes buff does not apply right away after you reload. It actually applies more like 0.5 seconds after, so just keep that in mind. If you're curious about my stats, here they are. Now for your Cradle buffs, mandatory ones are going to be Long Range Enhancement, Tactical Combo, Steady Hand, and Bounty Hunter. Then for PvE, you have a lot of choices, and here they are. So Master Tactician for more damage against Great Ones, Deviation Master for more damage against Great Ones and Elites, Anti-Regen Sniper Rifle so that now your bingo can actually deal damage to Super Anomaly Regens, Handgun Enhancement if you run the Wildfire, and Lone Walker if you're fighting solo against monsters. Then for PvP, swap the PvE ones out for Sprint, Sky Operation, and Advantage Barrier. Now for your food buffs, let's actually start with the drinks one. So you've got Stardust Raspberry Shaved Ice for the increased Bullseye effect duration by 20%, which means that your Bullseye duration is going to be extended by 2.4 seconds. But for PvP, you can definitively run the Iced Tea for more movement speed. And don't forget that it can stack with smaller buffs such as Fruit Tea. Right here, dishes provide a sanity restoring bonus. Then for food, your best in slot is going to be Crumbly Bread due to having so much weak spot damage. And then that will then be followed by stuff like assorted canned fruits, mixed fried hot dog, and all of the other buffs. As usual, don't forget that for food, it's the same one for the drinks. Small buffs are stackable, so you should definitely get yourself the rabbit steak combo and the deer steak combo for more stamina. And that you can also get the Pompano pan-fried fish for the weak spot damage buff. If you've enjoyed this guide, consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel for more content like this. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one.